Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from the world today. Pete, it's good to see you, and Kevin as well. Look, guys, we've got some guests with us today. We're going to talk about a Sony announcement that is coming up in just under an hour, and I have some special guests lined up with me. We are having some technical difficulties this morning. James Jackson from James Jackson Films couldn't connect. I don't know if it's an issue with Ecamm or something else, but he could connect with his Chrome browser for some strange reason. But this is all about the Sony announcement. According to Sony Alpha rumors, we are getting not one, as you can see here, a new camera is coming. This is from Sony. This is their own announcement. A new camera is coming, but Sony Alpha rumors is telling us that we're not getting one, but two successors to the A7C. The A7C II and a high-resolution version, the A7CR, along with the 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8 GM2. So I'm pretty excited. Normally for a camera of this level, like the A7C, I wasn't super excited about. But this one here, we've been hearing so many different things from Sony Alpha rumors. We're hearing a price of €23.99 for the A7C II and $36.99 for the A7CR. A mini Sony A7R5, but it's only supposed to have an SD card slot. So here's what we're going to do over the next hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on how long we go here. We are going to focus on the first hour before the announcement. We're going to talk about these two cameras, the specifications. Do they make sense? Who's it meant for? And then we'll cover the announcement live. And then hopefully, as long as we don't have any other technical issues with Ecamm, I might have a few other guests on that actually have experience with these cameras. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we do that, without much ado, I'd like to welcome John Ishii to the channel. John, I think this is your first time on my channel.
Yes, sir. It certainly is. It's an honor. Thank you very much, Simon.
Oh, the honor's all mine. Where are you dialed in from?
Currently, I'm in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and it's 2100.
2100 hours, 9 p.m. I'm starting to lose my voice. I don't know why. I've got some coffee here, so I might let you do some more talking. But I want to let people know who you are, because people think of me as, some people, not everybody, people think of me as a Canon shooter, and that's what I do, and I don't know anything about Sony or anything else. I'm not going to fight that perception. I love covering all cameras. I'm a gearhead. I love all things camera, and anybody who's pushing that envelope forward is, I'm going to cheer it up. But you have a rather extensive background as a photographer, shooting for various publications, decades of experience with different camera bodies. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done in your experience?
Yeah, well, I'm a photojournalist. I started off in photojournalism, and I shot for the wires. First stint with a French news agency, AFP, and then I did a lot of work for Associated Press. So predominantly it's photojournalism, and then a lot of editorial work. I get assignments to do editorial work for such magazines as Wall Street Journal, in-flight magazines. And then I did, as a photographer, you got to be pretty well flexible. So then I did a lot of commercial work because I wanted to learn how to do commercial work. So I did hotels, resorts, and other editorial travel magazines, travel books, etc. But my first love is photojournalism. So I did big stories, tsunami in Southeast Asia. I've done politics, I've done riots, I covered politicians. You have to be extremely versatile for anything from football matches to boxing to basketball to, for example, world events, sports events, track and field, etc., etc., and the list goes on and on.
Well,
and my published work is, and this is very important, in order to be a photographer, you got to have published work, because that's something that nobody can take away from you. So my published work was in major newspapers all around the United States, USA Today, BBC, CNN, Boston Globe, Miami Herald, Washington Post, etc. So that gives you a little rundown of what I did.
Well, I also understand you're not a Sony what's, I guess the modern term is fan or a fanboy. You're not a Canon fanboy. You're not a Nikon. I understand that you have, well, if it's been out for 6 months, there's a good chance you have it. Is that correct?
What? Which camera?
Well, any camera brands. Like I understand you have a rather large
Oh,
inventory of different camera
yeah.
brands.
I own so many. Um, I'm a Leica user, so I got a whole extensive collection of Leica. I'm a Hasselblad user, X2Ds, 907Xs. I'm a avid Fuji, so for high megapixel, I use GFX 100S. And then as far for everything else, I use Nikon. And the reason why is all my photojournalism work was with Nikon and Canon. Those were the two mainstays in my days. Was either you do Canon or you do Nikon. It's one or the other, because they basically both did the same thing. And then until recently, in the last, I say the last 4 or 5 years, Associated Press switched from Canon to Sony A1.
That is interesting. What I want to do now is I want to jump into the rumored specifications, and I want to do a bit of a shout out to Sony Alpha Rumors. Sometimes they do take it on the chin, but they pretty much nail things with the A7R5, and we won't know how accurate they are until 10 o'clock, until the bottom of the hour. But the Sony A7C II is supposed to have the exact same sensor as the A7 IV, 33 megapixel full frame sensor. It's going to have that AI processing unit. That's something that Sony Alpha Rumors has told us that since the A7R5 onwards, it's going to be in everything. AI features, it's going to have 10 frames per second continuous shooting. We got one person asking, will it get 12 frames per second mechanical? We will know at the bottom of the hour. It's going to have IBIS, an improved autofocus system over the A7 IV, which is kind of expected with the AI processing unit. In terms of video, no real surprises here. It's not going to do 8K. No mention if it'll do 6K over sample 4K, but with a 33 megapixel sensor, it certainly should be able to do 7K if they allow it. But the video modes and resolutions, 4K, all the basic frame rates, 24, 25, 30, 50, and 60 frames per second. But this is where things get a little bit of a downer fish for some people. A single SD card slot, micro HDMI, and while it has a fully articulating LC, it doesn't have the same one as the A7R5. And of course, the EVF, 2.36 million dots. And according to leaked pricing, again, sourced through Sony Alpha Rumors, 2,399 euros. What do you think of that camera, John? Who do you think this is aimed at?
Well, I mean, this it's a bit odd, to be honest with you. The other ones are a little bit more definitive, but this one, I don't know. It looks like to me it's neither here or there, but the price is certainly not cheap. That's an expensive camera for what you get. You know, I'm not too hip on the micro HDMI because that'll break. I'm not too hot on the single card slot either, because that has a potential of packing up.
Yeah, it is interesting.
No, I don't get it. I don't know who it's
Here's
for.
the current model, the A7C. It was recently on sale, $200 off. It's back up to its regular price. I don't know that that's a good sign. So $1,798, if that €2,300 price is correct, then I would I'd be willing to guess that the price for the A7C II in US dollars is probably going to be around $2,100, $2,200, something around that point before tax. So I'm a little curious about that. I see. Here's what I'm thinking, John. And let's go right back to this same page here. So let's go ahead and bring up the Sony A7 IV. And if we take a look here, we can see that camera by itself, it's $24.98. Okay, so $24.98. And I find that a little bit strange because if it's $24.98 and you look at some of the capabilities that camera has, let's take a look at the Sony A7 IV down here. And look at the capabilities, right? Look, card slots, frames per second. I would, other than not having that AI chip, I'd go with the A7 IV.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, if the rumors are correct, this is why I want to do a live stream about this, is because based on what we're hearing from the rumors, things aren't quite jiving. So now let's take a look at a camera
Oh,
that I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure you'll like this camera, or at least the idea of this camera. I'm calling it the mini Sony A7R5. And let's bring it up here. And James, can you hear me, James? Are you back in the room?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
James, you
yes.
sound awesome and you look great too. What's going on? What happened?
So I basically had to trick Ecamm that I was disconnected, and then basically had to loop OBS into it. So it was but basically I had to trick it into getting out of it. But I got it, but it's working now. So apologies again for running late due to technical difficulties.
No worries. And we have another guest in the room. I'd like to say a special hello. He couldn't join us through video, but Andrea, who's actually the owner and editorial director of Sony Alpha Rumors. So Andrea, thank you for stopping in to say hello. I understand. I know you're going to be, and keep an eye on Sony Alpha Rumors too while this stream is going, because he's going to be posting stuff of relevance as well. So great work, Andrea, on everything you've been doing and the information you've been reporting to us, including the images. We're going to show off your site in just a moment. So, James, I'll start with you, then we'll go back to John because you haven't had a chance to talk. This is the Sony A7CR, a mini, and I'm just staring at the specs here, a mini A7R5, the same 61 megapixel full frame backside illuminated sensor. Bion's XR image processor, no surprises. AI processing unit, no surprises. But it's also going to have AI features such as auto framing, 10 frames per second continuous shooting, IBIS, and I want to touch on that for a minute. An article came out just yesterday saying that the association that dictates the speeds for Gen 3, Gen 4, etc., for CF Express cards, if you're a Sony shooter, this is very good news because it's going to be backwards compatible. They've approved Gen 4. What does that mean? Without having to buy a new camera, assuming what we're being told is correct, that you shouldn't have to do anything, you will get CF Express Type B speed and performance out of your Type A card. That is really, really big. And of course, you have a Type B, Nikon, Canon, well, then you'll get Type C type speed. So that's really good. So that CF Express Type A card might not be such of an issue, except for this camera's only supposed to have a single SD card slot. 4K video, 24, 25, 30, 50, and 60 frames per second, no 8K. Andrea did say that it is not going to have 8K and micro HDMI. So that's a bit of an irksome thing for me. But it
So
has, let me just
question.
cover this
So
one other thing, James. It does have that four-axis articulating LCD from the A7R5. But here's the thing, the kicker too. It's 36.99 euros. Do you spot anything strange here based on what we're hearing from the rumors?
um, quick question: is that SD card slot only SD, or is it backwards compatible to Type A?
A question I have asked myself, because if it's a dual CF Express Type A and SD, great. But from what I've been paying attention to Sony Alpha rumors and what they've been saying, and so far I believe it's just an SD card slot. If you want to update us on Andrea, but this you got to keep in mind, no matter how accurate rumors can be, it's usually not somebody from Sony talking directly to Andrea, for example. Quite often, what happens is it goes through multiple people, and it also is susceptible to broken telephone. You might
Yep,
remember
yep,
a certain channel said the R6 Mark II was going to have a stack sensor. Case in point, right?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but yeah. So I'll say if we're going to go basically that it's only SD cards, because the CF Express could maybe make that price tolerable, because then you can open up you can open up to data that can actually open up, even if you weren't getting higher resolutions, you could at least maybe get higher speed, so possibly higher frame rates. But given the fact that it's SD card slots, you're probably going to, if you're going to do any sort of high frame rates, you're probably going to have to do H.265, which I'm not a fan of as an acquisition codec. I love it as a delivery codec. But that pricing of what 30. You said 3,600 euros.
Yep. And hold on, let me interrupt. Andrea has just updated us again, live from Sony Alpha Rumors. Andrea is telling me he's only heard from a single SD card slot, not CF Express Type A. And that's exactly, I'm not 100% right at this time, so there might be smaller. And there always is. Look, whether it's Sony Alpha Rumors, whether it's Canon Rumors, whether it's myself, we do our best to get you the information as accurately as we can. But sometimes, things can be a little bit vague. Sorry, James, back to you.
Yeah. So I hope the price is not that high because it seems very disappropriate to what you are offering versus. I'm like, yeah, maybe because I'm like, how? It's been a while since I've checked, but what's the price of the A7R4 right now?
You mean
I'm
the
not R4.
A7R5? We
Yeah,
should
the
check
R5.
both. 3898 and the A7R4, and this is kind of what we're comparing things to. So the A7, no, it's the A7 IV, the A7R4A, 3198, and you see that price, 3198. That's roughly what 36.99 euros should translate into. Don't do a direct FX exchange. There's many other components that go into that formula, but
But yeah,
3898.
that's that. I hope that the pricing is a lot lower because otherwise I can't. I honestly can't. It'll be very difficult. There has to be something very very unique and something that cannot be seen in any other camera to let me believe that a camera with you know only one card slots, the limited record options that is going to be, especially given the fact that it's only SD, for it to be about US roughly $3,200. That's pretty steep of an asking price.
So, and this is where my mind comes to. That's why I want to focus on this slide for a minute. 3898, the Sony A7R5 is a very capable camera. 8K video, 2425 frames per second. Sure, there's a 1.2 times crop, but hey, you know what? It still does 8K 2425, 10 frames per second, continuous autofocus, 61 megapixels. It stands above the R5 and the Z8 in that it's a high resolution camera, whereas those other two cameras are more, they're around 45 megapixels. They do better video, but the Sony's really pushing that high resolution. However, if the Sony A7CR does come in, even if, let's just lowball it a bit, $29.99 based on the rumors, that would be, what, $900 less than the Sony A7R5 to $700 or $600 less than the Sony A7R5. Me personally, if I'm looking at spending $3,000 US, I got to say, well, wait a minute, a single SD card slot? I don't get the 8K video. I lose a lot of the performance in RAW, so why don't I just spend the extra money and get that, or drop down and get the A7 IV?
Yeah.
And this is where this is really, really interesting because we're seeing specs that are sounding really good on one hand. Like the A7C, all you do is you think of not quite budget, because at $1,798, $1,800, almost the same price point as a Sony FX30, which is got the same specifications as a Sony A7S III, which sells for what? $38.98. So you look at the FX30 if you're a video shooter.
I don't think no, the FX30 does not have the same specs as the A7S III. It has the same specs as the A7 IV, if I remember correctly.
No, it's very, very similar. Very, very similar to the because it's borrowing from the FX3, which is borrowing from the A7S III. So there are, like, dynamic range isn't as good, but you get the same video modes.
Yeah. I mean, performance, body wise, it's the same. But what I'm talking about is sort of what you're expecting. Like the 4K 120 is not it's not the same. It's a higher resolution. It's not the same sensor or the same the same process. So that's all. That's all I was saying. But yeah,
John, I want to get. John's been really quiet because when me and James get going, we forget other people are in the room. John, your thoughts on the specs, the price of the rumored Sony A7CR? Let's bring it back again.
Well, I think it's a little ridiculous. Should be a $1,500 camera all day long. I mean, what am I?
who is the A7C designed for? Like, if we look at the current specs of the current model, 1798, who
Well,
is the A7C aimed at? Would you say?
I think it's for an amateur who got no money. 38.98 for the other one, and you expect me to pay the same price, and you're gonna give me what? A single slot SD card? What the hell? 10 frames per second? You might as well
Micro
just get
micro HDMI 2.
what's yeah, that's gonna break. That's gonna break, guarantee.
Well,
So either
I've been
they're
using it.
off, well,
Micro
either
HDMI,
they're
I've been
off
using
on
it
the
for 3 years. You
price.
have to use that cable adapter, otherwise. But I never take my camera
Well,
out
the
with it.
thing is, Simon, sure, you can use it, but if it's $1,500, okay, no problem. But at almost 4,000, I mean, at 30, whatever it is, 3,000 plus, forget it. I want the real deal. Give me the big HDMI. I don't want one that breaks off and a mini. That's for toys.
Well,
I mean, I
again,
hate to be blunt here, but I've been in this
true.
business too long. You do it commercially as a pro, that thing is coming off.
Well, let me ask this, because one thing I believe is that generally camera companies don't do stupid things intentionally. So I either A, don't believe the price, or I don't believe the single SD card slot, or I don't believe some of the capabilities. So this is what we're going to find out in about 40 minutes. We're going to
Well, I
find
just can't
out.
see. I can't see Sony as a company like that going backwards. The whole point is to move forward. You come up with a new product, you move forward, right?
Yep.
Logically,
And
and
they're not going to cannibalize the A7 IV or the A7R5, are
no,
they?
I've gone through this before of paying more and getting less. You pay more for the burger, which I can understand because cost of inflation, but then now you're going to get less meat. Well, I'm not going there. It's the same thing. So you're going to charge me that kind of price, but you're going to give me a less performance SD card and a smaller whatever HDMI. I mean, come on, switch to a different brand. I mean, I've had my share of Sony, and they haven't been the most reliable cameras for me. They packed up on me big time on professional shoots. So, am I surprised? No, not really.
Well, we'll wait and see. I want to take us over to Sony Alpha Rumors. They did publish some photos this morning. So here's the A7CR. The R is red. But we also have a lens that's coming with it. It's going to be, well, actually, let's see, what is it here? So the new lens, we're talking about the lens, is lighter, 10 millimeters shorter than the older version. And it's going to
And that,
have, no surprises, improved sharpness.
and that's another thing. 1635. That's a joke. Why you want 1635 is not enough. It's not going to give you the edge.
So
You got to have 14.
who is the 1635 aimed at then, John?
1635 we use as photojournalists. The reason why I beat out Canon all the time is that Nikon made a 1424, and I could get shots they couldn't because they had a 1635. That little difference, the 2 mm, makes a big difference when you get the shot or you don't get the shot.
So help people understand the difference between something like a 14 to 22 and a 16 to 35.
Well, yeah, like I said, the 2 mm will get you the shot, especially in tight places, especially when you're doing a lot of politics or you're up close with a bunch of cops beating on you at a riot. You need it because you don't get a second chance, and you got to get in closer.
But I want to kind
You
of
see
bring
where
us
I'm coming
back
from?
to, I do, but you're very much a professional photojournalist. I don't
Well,
see this camera being aimed at that segment though.
well, these days, who knows? It could be you use what you got. I had to use what was given me, but when it came to my personal choices, that's where I had the advantage over everybody else. Was not when Nikon came out with that 1424 2.8, and all the other guys using Canons only had 1635s.
No,
You
and
see what I mean?
I look,
And you could.
completely get that, and that's when I was covering the Canon
Mm-hmm.
RF 100 to 300 millimeter f2.8 for $9,500. A lot of people said, yeah, it's way too much. It's too expensive. Canon's going crazy. And I said, well, hold on a minute here. If you're covering Olympics, if you're doing Sports Illustrated, you want to be on the cover, then you're going to buy this lens because it's going to give you what you need. Wide open f2.8 inside, 100 to 300 millimeters. That's the type of lens you're going to shoot with. But for the
Well,
rest of us,
people don't understand that 2 mm could mean the difference between getting the cover shot and not.
no, exactly.
And who makes that choice? I don't make that choice. You know who makes the choice? Your photo editor makes the choice. He's God, or she's the God.
I hear you, but
And
we gotta frame this in terms of the A7C is if as a because you've already said looking at this, it's not aimed at a professional photojournalist or
no, I'm
for a
talking
sports
about the
co-
lens.
Yes.
I'm talking about the lens. Unless this lens only fits this camera.
No, but I'm not trying to review the entire ecosystem. I'm just looking at what's being announced here, and that the 16 to 35 is being
Well,
announced
okay.
here with these two cameras.
What you mentioned the 1635 GM whatever master thing, and the camera doesn't even have it's a flat top plate. Where's the pentaprism on top of it like the other models?
I don't know. James, what do
You
you
know,
think?
why'd they shave that off?
Um, um, I it's I mean, it's a 16 to 35. I mean, those ranges are different. I guess for me, especially for I guess it's looking to be 20. There, Sony Alpha rumors are saying it's roughly going to be about $2,400 for for the price of the lens.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like, really, my guess is that this is a lens that's going to really try to focus on speed that it can come up with these new cameras, and you really show off the new AI technology. But and you can speak on this probably better than me, man. But I don't know if how much photographers actually care about a lot of that AI technology. At least the newer stuff, not the birds and eyes and planes. That yes, but more sort of the thing that they've really been hampering since the ZV1 that they've been releasing. I don't know if it's that much of a boost that it you gotta the lens is that the lens is solid, but I keep going back to, and I keep looking at people to do something different, like Canon when they released the 28 to 70 f2. Sure, and I know a lot of people were not happy with the loss of the 4 millimeters, but having for me as a filmmaker having that f2 and also just how insanely sharp it was edge to edge, even at f2 as a filmmaker. I'm not going to drop anywhere below f2, but having that, and I'm usually, for me, a good wide is like 30 millimeters for me as a filmmaker. 30 millimeters is a good wide. So something having something like that where I can get a wide, a standard, and then a somewhat of a telephoto in that lens. That was something unique, even though it was big and heavy. I mean, I know it's a G Master. I know it's going to be optical quality. I know it's going to be all that. But it's just like it's a 16 to 35, and
Yeah,
that's
so what?
$2,400.
1635 is no big deal. I mean, they, they've been making 1635s for decades. I mean, during the film days, Canon had 1635. That was the SOP, man. That was it. That was in your bag. 1635, 2470, and at 7200. Now, about filmmaking, well, I don't know anything about that. That's a whole different ball of wax.
Well, that's where I want to chime in too, because I would say some 60% of my audience are photographers. You really want to know about the dynamic range, the ISO, what it's like shooting raw, how many frames per second mechanical, electronic, and all that sort of stuff. But just to give you a bit of a window into our universe, see, we look at things differently. It's almost as though we're using the exact same words, the exact same language, but it doesn't make any sense the way we're discussing things. So, for example, as a photographer, if I'm going to shoot birds, wildlife, I'm going to stick that shutter all the way up to somewhere around 800 to 1200. The aperture, I'm probably going to, depending on how far away I am, I might want to go really wide. Maybe I'll go to f2.8, maybe f2. Really depends on how close I am. And then, of course, I'll probably let the ISO float because I'm shooting outside. Now, as a videographer covering the exact same scene, I'm going to be shooting at 30 frames per second. So that means my shutter is going to be 1/60th of a second. I can't touch that. I leave it alone. That's where I am. And I let my ISO float. So now the only control I have is over the aperture. And so having that f2, if I'm shooting those birds, let's say it's in a snow scene, which means it's winter, which means I'm getting light very, very indirectly, I need wide, and getting f2 means the difference between a lot of noise in the scene and getting everything sharp. So when I'm, for me to be able to get a lens that can shoot f1.4 is huge. Even in the summertime, I'm shooting in the forest. If I want to get everything so it looks sharp and the exposure and the lighting on the person's face, the subject's face, or the wildlife, having wide open is really, really huge. And somebody brought up an interesting comment about saying that, well, the 16-35 is more of a video lens. James, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that's an accurate statement. It's if you're going full frame, it's wide. It's decently wide enough for if you're doing real estate videos. I think most people would probably prefer like a 12 or to a 15 in that range. But you can, if you're shooting full frame video, you can probably get away with 16. Really, it's for like if you're having one lens to shoot with in 16-35. 16-35 is a good range to have. It'll give you a nice wide, but so I think, especially if you need a nice solid strong lens to go with. I do agree with that. Though I personally, I know I'm only speaking to me personally in terms of my shooting style. I like a little bit more telephotos. Because I like to just get one. I like to get more one up close and personal to my subject, but also I like to get a lot more compression. I love the look of compression. So I love going more into the 60s, the 90s, or the 150s, and having that range. Doesn't make sense for everything, but in certain situations it does. But I agree. Yeah, I think as a video one, I think that's going to be a decently solid. If you got Sony cameras for video, 16-35 is going to be pretty nice. It will just be depending on how, like, is there going to be any like significance of the lens talking to the autofocus? Yeah.
So I want to know some of the lenses that are in your bag and what you kind of shoot with it. But just a note from Andrea, because I think it's very important to kind of look at who is this camera focused is aimed at. And I know it's not me. I know it's not John. And I know it's not James for what we do. It doesn't mean it's a bad camera. Now, pricing, I will talk about that later. But what Andrea said, and I think he said it correctly here, is that this camera is aimed at people who are, they want that small, compact, full frame camera. They want really good benefits, but it's about portability, being able to travel on a plane and all sorts of things without it because I'll be honest with you, I was we were doing a scene with my son, and it's called the park tour. So the last week before school starts, he goes to as many parks as he can within a couple of hours. I got the R5 around my neck with a 24-105. I got the headphones on, and I'm sweating because I've got all this heavy gear. But I know the results I'm going to get. Not everybody wants to do that. People want lighter weight. But what would you say are your go-to lens in a pinch, James? And then we'll go to John.
My go-to lens, if I depends. Usually for weddings, my go-to lens, because I'm on the C70, the 18-35 is sort of my go-to lens from Sigma. The Sigma 18-35 f1.8. It has enough speed to deal with any sort of lighting conditions, especially with the C70, which has incredible clean shadows and clean shadow performance. But then for me, honestly, my secret sauce lens is actually a prime, and it's a 150 prime. It's the IRIX 150 T30 macro. And I use it even for interviews because the way it just compresses everything, and it has such a nice soft roll off, and it's incredibly sharp. So you can do macros, and if you know how to compose, you can actually use it even for non-macro shots. So And then for me, I like going to something like a 40 to a 40 range just to get sort of more in that standard.
Okay, good. John, your go-to focal lengths and apertures.
Well, right now my go-to lens is a 26 millimeter 2.8 S lens Nikkor, and the reason being is it's the same focal length as an iPhone.
Anything else?
As for Yeah, as far as I got so many lenses, Simon. I don't know where to start. I got,
Yeah, but I'm
let's
talking
see.
your favorites, your go-tos. Like if you're going to go someplace, this is the lens you're going to go into
Okay,
that
for
scenario.
example, I'm leaving for Nepal, so I want to pack light. So I'll just take 1430 for like Milky Way, and then 24 24 120.
Okay. So my camera bag,
It-
I have a few lenses. I do not have the depth and breadth that you have, John. If this was an analogy to baseball, you got more than enough depth and breadth to win the World Series or the World Cup. For me, right now I'm shooting with the 50 millimeter f1.2, and that lens I would say is on my camera 90% of the time because I do this channel. Again, I'm focused on video. So anything low
Mm.
light, and low light means indoors. It means in not necessarily cloudy environments, but an environment where you have a lot of shade. So a forest, for example, even on a bright sunny day. I love the fact that I can go all the way to f1.4. I've never had to go to f1.2, but I've gone to f1.6. And I love it. It's incredible. It's expensive. That's one thing Canon's known for is the quality and the sharpness of their lenses, but the price. For an amateur, it's a tough thing to save up for. But the other lens is far more affordable, and it's what I call my general purpose lens. It's the 24 to 105 f4. And
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, well, that's a standard SOP lens, 24-105. I used it when I owned a Canon.
why
That
is that,
was
John? Why is it considered a standard lens? Why do people like it so
yeah,
much?
it was just easy. It was good. It was sharp. It was built well, and 24-105 is I love it. I loved it because 24-70s is too short, but that 105, in a pinch, it gets you a nice headshot, gives you some bouquet, and you're
Question,
good to
John.
go. So
Question,
very
John.
good.
Is it? Yeah, John. Has that only been the 24 to 105 from Canon's DSLR line, or are you also? Is that the? Do you feel the same way about their RF 24 to 105? Because I do feel
Well,
the same way.
RF I can't speak for because I never tried, but this is for the regular, you know. I mean, they've had that 24-105 for decades,
Yeah,
and
no,
it
I
was
agree. Yeah, yeah, because I agree because I had the 21 to 105, and I agree with a lot of things you say. The RF version is I don't know what it is that they did with it. Maybe it is the flange distance, but it is. I think me and Simon have said the same thing. It is too good for what it is for a 24 to 105. It's like it shouldn't be that good of a lens
Well, that's why Canon's raising the price on it slowly.
yeah. And another one I'll put in terms. I know this is a Sony event, but I'll throw in for this for Canon is the 15 to 35 RF because they actually also incorporate lens stabilization on that, which there isn't a lot of 15 to 35s that offer lens stabilization on their lenses. So again, Canon has done something that is unique and different, given at least in terms of their RF lines.
Well, and this is why I like covering all cameras. The last thing I want to do is, okay, I'm booting James because he just mentioned Canon, or I'm booting John because he's focusing on Nikon. We live in a world where we see all these different things in different brands, and you can look to Canon and go like, wow, they have really sharp lenses. It's just amazing what you can do in wide open if you've got the budget. So if you're pro level, it's great. But if you want affordable glass, if you want affordable primes, zooms, telephotos, you name it, you don't have it with the RF mount. You do definitely have it with the E mount. Like Sony's got the thing that Sony was very strategic on is when they who was it? Konica Minolta. What was it back in 2008, 7, 6, somewhere around then? They bought it. And when they started coming out with the alpha cameras, they decided to say, okay, you know what? The E-mount, it's open to everybody. And that really, really helped. After they got a few duds out of the market, Sony really started to run with their mirrorless system. They started getting a lot of lenses to the point today, people look at Sony and say, wow, what a lot of lenses. And if you're starting out and if you're looking for compact cameras and you're looking at this A7C II, I would almost say, you know what you really want to do is, especially if you're starting out, and especially if you've only got a kit lens, ask yourself, what focal length? Do some time and research to understand what focal lengths are going to matter to you, such as 50 mil. That's why I love the 24 to 105, because you can set it to 50 and not change it. If your subject is too far away, don't zoom. Move closer, move far away, unless, of course, it's a grizzly bear. Play around with 35, 24, and what you'll very quickly realize, which is what I did, is I loved 50 more than anything else. So I bought that prime. But when you're traveling, to be able to have all those different primes in one lens and have pretty good sharpness really, really helps. And if you are starting out, I might almost suggest buying a 50 millimeter on a full frame camera, 35 millimeters on an APS-C or a Micro Four Thirds, because it's going to teach you a lot about framing and getting that look. And I can't say anything else about that. One thing I do want to mention, though, if you are interested in pre-ordering, I do have some links in the description down below. And basically, oh, I'm in the wrong application here. I have links to both Adorama and B&H for both models. I don't make any money off these live streams. Neither does James or John. So definitely please subscribe to their channel to help them out. For me, this really helps me purchase new gear. I get 2 to 6% back, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. So if you're in the market for it and thinking of purchasing it from either Adorama or B&H, then please consider doing so. But also, I don't make any money off of affiliates if you're buying from your local camera store. But if you have an option, support your local camera store in your own country, because we're in a declining market, and these camera stores really appreciate your business, and you'd be surprised at how much they'll go to town for you, take that extra mile. I work
Totally
with
agree.
Patrick at Downtown Camera in Canada. Everything I buy from him, he'll just say, Simon, here's your price. And if you call him, link in the description, if you call him up, he ships anywhere in Canada. Just mention my name, and I can guarantee you, I don't care if it's coming out today, tomorrow, whenever it is, he'll always sharpen his pencil for you. And that's what these smaller camera stores do. And especially if you're trying to get a rare camera like the Z8, the Alpha 1 II, the A9 III, Adorama, good luck being one of the first in. But your local camera store, you develop a relationship, they can ensure that you're going to have that camera or that lens pretty quick.
Yeah, and I'll give a little quick story why you should continue to support your local stores. I used to own the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. In fact, I was the first one in the United States to get the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. They announced it. So many people ordered and pre-ordered it. I actually never pre-ordered the camera. I know a lot of my friends who pre-ordered from B&H and Adorama, and they're great, and don't get it twisted, but they were waiting a long time. Instead, what happened was I got a local store that was out in Jersey, and they got the camera. As soon as they got the camera, I hit them up, and they sent me the camera. And then upon that, that's one of the things about local stores. The big brands are going to definitely take in a lot of the bulk of the orders. They're built for that. But there's also going to more of your local stores. One, you're supporting your local economy, but also you can build a relationship to where you can definitely see you can be one of the first people to get something, especially if you don't have to worry about waiting.
Yeah, I'm transparent here. I'm not doing this just to make money. In fact, it wasn't until I started covering the Nikon Z8 doing these live streams that I actually learned that you can make money doing them with the pre-orders. To me, it's more about being transparent, being open and honest with you, bringing in people that will disagree with me over certain things, and creating multiple different viewpoints, so that when you're looking, because we're all looking at the same cameras, we're all looking at the same specs, I'll bring them up again, we're looking at the exact same stuff, but we see it differently from our experience. And that's what I want to do, is help you understand what all the latest talk is, all the latest rumors, and I think Sony Alpha Rumors does a great job, and he's leaving us right now, but he wants to remind us about the A9 Mark III. It's going to be coming soon. But all of us are doing our best to try and present you with information so we can inform you to make the right decision. I'm not going to tell you what to buy. There's no such thing as the best camera. Anybody,
Nope.
whenever I see these links on YouTube saying the best camera of 2023, no interest because they don't know you. They don't know you. What I try to couch it is, what are you looking for in outcomes? Who is this camera for? Here's the information. And I'll tell you what I use. Ask me questions, ask John questions, ask James questions, because you've got a decade's experience photojournalist, you've got a filmmaker, and you've got this guy. So, and we're going to have some more joining. But I'm trying to build a community here where you can come on. You're not getting spammed in the comments. You don't have to agree. I just don't. I watch for people who are being rude and trying to troll and trying to be mean to people, because that I won't tolerate. But to create an environment where we can talk about cameras like the A7CR, I still look at this, and I want to change. John and James, I want you to see things the way I'm seeing this as a potential. The Nikon Z8 is a mini Z9 in almost every aspect. I mean, you look at the two cameras side by side, and essentially, for a person like me, I am getting the Nikon Z9 for $1,500 less. The dual CF Express cards, the extra performance, the best of the best, I don't really need, so I don't need to pay $1,500 for that. The A7CR potentially for Sony could be like the Z8 is to the Z9. But for it to do that, the price has to change. And I think that could be one thing. Now, it's not going to be professionals, because if it does have a single card slot, that does rule out professionals. But for hobbyists, for people like me, maybe somebody like you, to be able to see the A7R5 as a camera that there's no way we can afford, but to be able to have most of those same specs in a camera that costs several $1,000s less, I think potentially, yes, that could sell very, very well, and is in a different market to the A7 IV. But the A7C2, I see $19.99, $18.99, maybe $20.99, but I don't see $22.99 or $21.99. But John, based on the way my viewpoint is, what do you think?
Well, what I think is this pricing has got to be wrong. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Like you compare it to the Z9 Z8 thing. Well, there's a big price difference, but this guy, it's almost the same price. It just didn't seem right. I guess we'll find out in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I want to quickly respond to Aaron. I started talking about an RF to E mount adapter. I don't think that's, first of all, that's not possible. The flange distance, it's not there. But to go back to this, yeah, the price has to be wrong, because at least for me, and John, maybe you can join in. Anything above $2,800, you start going into professional camera, because
Yes,
if
totally,
yeah,
totally agree.
because hobbyists, if you're a hobbyist, I'm looking to try to just have something to go like the A7C2. If it's like 1800, that's like hobbyist. Okay, that's like a premium hobbyist. Like I want to go, like I want a camera to just throw in the bag. I don't want to throw a lot of stuff. Just go in. I want to just travel. I remember, because I go back to a buddy of mine. His name is Junkyard. He does a lot of wedding videos. He went back. He's from Liberia, and he went back to visit his father like right before the pandemic, and he took the A7C, and it was just him just to document his travel there. And that's something that to me is where the something like the A7C2 will probably make. I don't know if the price is what it is with the A7CR. I have no idea who is this for. It's too expensive, because if that's the price, that's way too expensive for a hobbyist.
Yeah,
Because
I
I can,
totally agree.
because I'll just look
Totally
at it like,
agree.
because I'll just look at it like, I'll just go get an A7 IV, and I'll have better, better ergos. I'll have a second card slot. It's I lose some resolutions, but the bump from that to 61 megapixels, I don't think a hobbyist is going to notice the difference. Only people that are actually professional are going to notice the difference, and with those megapixel differences. And then, and if you're going to go for it, and if it's professional, I'm going to be like, well, why not just get the A7R5? Maybe the real secret is the A7Rs, the A7CR is to boost up the A7R5 sales. Maybe that's the secret.
Okay, let me ask this question. And first of all, hopefully my audio is a little bit better now. What price point? I'm going to ask for predictions. Price point, James, for the the A7CR and the A7C2. What are your thoughts?
All right. If for a success, I would say $2,600. If it's $2,600, I'm like, it's still high, but given the resolution stuff, I could see it with the features that is supposed to come with it. I can possibly see it. It still would be a no buy for me personally, but I can see people spark something interest if it's around 22 to $2,600. The A7C2, I would say, I hope it's somewhere between $1,600 and $1,800, because even then you got a competition with the Canon R8, which I believe is $1,500. It's Sony's own. You got Sony's own cameras like this, the FX30, which is like roughly around that price range too. And then if you there's just a lot of options in that. So for a camera that's only one card slot, and then some of the other things that looks like micro HDMI, which I just feel like to me to really work, it's got to be like 16, somewhere between $1,500 to $1,800 for the A7C2 and $2,200 to $2,600 for the A7CR.
Okay, John?
I ditto.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same. I think like $1,899 and $25 or $26.99, and I think that certainly makes a lot of sense. I'm getting pretty excited here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cover. You can already see this is the live stream. I don't believe the audio translates forward, which is fine because my plan is to mute the audio here, and then we're going to provide commentary as we hear the updates and talk over it. Because if you just wanted to hear from Sony themselves, then you'd switch over from this channel and you'd go watch it live there. So the value add that we provide is the live commentary from multiple viewpoints. So this is exciting. I remember covering the Nikon Z8 just back on May the 10th, and that really kind of shocked me. I had up to 859 concurrent peak views. And it just goes to show you how desirable that camera was. The A7C is an affordable, lightweight, compact camera that has some pretty impressive capabilities. Having two successors, well, a new camera is coming. That's what it says here, not two new cameras. So I'm curious to see what is actually going to get announced. How is this going to differ from the rumored specifications? But everything we've seen from Sony Alpha Rumors, you saw him commenting with us here for the first 45 minutes. We're getting two models. We're getting the 16 to 35. And that's what I'm excited to find out. And one reason to stick around after the embargo is lifted, I can't receive confirmation. I've got a few people that have the camera in their hands, and they've said they'll do their best to come on the channel, but it doesn't always work out. And they can never confirm because they're under an NDA. And until that embargo is lifted, people can't show up on the channel. So I'm hoping, and if we do get those people, then we'll probably end up talking for about another hour. I'll open up the floor to questions. You'll get to ask my guests questions. If not, we'll talk about it for a little bit more and then end the stream. So I'm curious to know. I'm really curious to know. The pricing to me is the specs by themselves aren't an issue. And a single card slot in this price point isn't really an issue. Like, I'll be honest with you, I shot for many, many years with just a single card slot. Now, I'd take multiple with me. I'd shoot with one. I'd take it out, put another one in. So if I ever did have a card failure, which was rare, at least I wouldn't lose everything. But I've had SSDs fail. I've had SD cards fail. Haven't had a CF Express card fail yet, but it doesn't matter who you buy from, whether it be Angelbird or a low end, probability will tell you that at some point you, if you shoot enough, are going to have a failure. So you need to think of redundancy. And if you're making money off this stuff, or if you're doing a lot of traveling to places you're never going to go again, that's when you want to think of dual cards, because I'll be honest with you, until you have a failure, you don't think. I lost one of my SSDs when I was editing. I lost a lot of content, but thankfully I still had my CF Express cards with all the data so I could bring it back in. I had a backup file that I was able to know the cut points. Took me about a week or two to bring everything back.
That's
now,
why internal memory is important. That's why you got to have internal memory.
yeah.
My Hassi's got internal 1 terabyte of internal memory, and so does the Leica M11.
Well, John, it wasn't until I got the R5 that I understood why it is important to have 8K, why it is important to have dual card slots, why it's important to not just have dual recording for photos, but video as well. And, you know, I was guilty of being ignorant and saying, no one ever needs 8K. No one ever needs 45 megapixels. You don't need, like, V60, V90 is more than fast enough. V30 is more than fast enough for 4K 30. And sometimes you just have to try something to realize it. So here we are, 9 minutes, 9:56 my time. It's almost 10 o'clock, or 2300 hours, or 22 CST, 1500 BST. And I'm just kind of excited. I am going to bring in a third guest here. This person is a roving live reporter. No, he's not. He's a raving lunatic sometimes. But this gentleman his name is Stop the FOMO. He has a channel that covers televisions, and he does all things Sony. And he just muted himself, so he's going to chime in when he can. Yeah, go ahead, James.
I just wanted to go just talk about the reporters of redundancy, because I know I constantly get killed on my own channel because one of my biggest critiques of the Panasonic cameras in terms, because they really pushed the external SSD recording, and I've always been a very, very proponent of don't do that, because one of the biggest, because one, not only are you adding, me and you, Simon, talked about all the time, you're adding signals to the signal chain by going with a cable out to a device. You're not only that, you'll actually get cages. You have to get cages that are proprietary for maybe a slot, which kind of defeats the purpose of the key argument as well. It's cheaper, until you have to buy everything out. But the number one thing is you can't. And I've talked to, I think it was Matt Frazier of Panasonic at NAB, and he told me, he was like, it's just not possible to record to an external SSD as well as to an internal media at the same time. It's not a possibility, and that's not just Panasonic, but
wrong. I've done it. So I wanted to try this out because somebody asked me a question with the Ninja 5 over HDMI.
No, not with Ninja 5. You can do it over HDMI. I'm talking about like a USB Type C directly to an SSD. You can't do both because the same thing can be done with other cameras, but you have to choose to fully work. If you're going out HDMI, send a video signal out to an HDMI to a Ninja V or any other monitor, and you're recording to SSDs, you could do that, which is the way I would say you should do it, because you get that, and then you still can back up to 2 media cards before. But the argument has been like, because like Samsung T5s are super cheaper than CF Express, I'll just get a USB Type C and go into the SSD, and then I don't have to worry about the media. And I'm like, you are really setting yourself up for trouble doing that. It's always good to go with the internal media.
Yeah, and okay, I'm going to talk about backup shortly, but because we're going to go right into the live coverage, and he just left again. I was going to do an introduction to him. I don't know what he's doing. He's like video bombing us. So I want to talk about a couple of things when it comes to backup. First of all, dual card slots is one, how should we say, way of eliminating the risk of losing content. It's not the only one. So once you take that out, you start editing. I have a backup that backs up my computer every hour, every day, every month, and I do that. But if somebody comes in and steals my stuff, I'm not good. So then you have cloud backup. Or you get a fire to your house or some other catastrophic loss. So it might seem to some of you, oh my God, that's just crazy. It's expensive. It's silly. But when you start actually having a business and your reputation matters, you cannot afford a single wedding failure. You cannot afford a single corporate failure. It matters. And I actually, that storage that I lost, I had a video ready to publish too. I was doing a review. So, can anybody else hear the audio coming from my computer for this Sony?
Nope, I don't hear it.
I don't hear.
Good. It was blinding for me. So,
Oh, how's it going,
Tai
man?
Wong is already out.
well, you know what? What I want to do is I want to bring in another guest here. First of all, Tony, it's a pleasure. I've been watching your channel for years. Thank you so much for joining me on my dinky little channel with my guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So I wasn't expecting you to actually join until right after the announcement. So
I mean, my watch says 10 o'clock.
yes.
Am I wrong about this?
No, it's starting at 10. The countdown is 1 minute to 10. I just don't want you to get into trouble and saying anything you're not allowed to say until.
Yeah, we both don't want that.
No, so I'm here to guard you and protect you.
Okay, thank you.
It's not about clicks and all that sort of stuff. It's I'm generally appreciative that you can join us on my Dinky channel. We've got some great guests here. I don't know if you've been watching the stream for the last half an hour.
No, I just ran down.
Well, what we did is we talked about the latest rumored specifications, and we're all kind of agreeing that, well, the specs themselves, they certainly are realistic and plausible. It's the pricing that's giving us a cause for concern. We just don't understand it.
You think the pricing is high?
Well, the pricing, according to, well, for the Sony A7C II, the pricing is supposed to be in euros, 23.99, and for the A7CR, 36.99 euros.
Okay, I actually don't know the European pricing. I only have the US and Canadian pricing. But I thought the pricing was okay. Like, it would have been great if it had been lower, but these are pretty capable cameras. They price them under the like more professional SLR styled bodies. But you feel like it's high?
Well, so what I'm looking at is I can't help but think of the Sony A7R5, 3898, really good camera. If I'm seeing 3699, I'm imagining around $3,200 US. And if it does have a single card slot, micro HDMI, I'm thinking, well, you know what? If I'm in the market to spend $3,200, I'm certainly going to spend the $3,800 and just get a better camera.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is a better camera. And I've actually been debating this because we have a trip planned. And I, of course, want a smaller body. And I like that it has the chrome on top. But at the same time, that single card slot, I mean, if you follow my channel, you know, we have cards fail a couple times a year, but it's devastating when it fails.
Yeah.
If you have only one card slot. And I can't imagine going on some dream vacation and then going to load my pictures and my card doesn't work, but it really does happen. And so I don't know that I'm willing to give up the second card slot for the smaller size.
I remember when I was watching, this is going back years, you did a video talking about storage and the importance of this. And I love, you and I have a very similar background. I have an IT background. I was a systems administrator, went into enterprise architecture. So I'm very analytical. I'm always, when's the other shoe going to drop? When's something going to break? And I had an SSD failure not too long ago. I had some backups, but not everything was backed up.
Yeah.
I think that's critical. So the presentation is going now. What can you tell us? Which camera do you want to start off with? Tell us your thoughts about it.
I guess we could start with the lower end camera, the A7C II. I thought it was great. Like, it's the A7 IV pretty much, and it performs equally as well, but it's smaller. And again, you can get the silver top, which I really like. It's not perfect. Like you said, both the C cameras have a single card slot. They both have bad viewfinders. I don't like the viewfinders at all. I love a rangefinder style viewfinder. I like it in the corner. It doesn't smush against my face, but they're still very low quality, just like the A7C. And to me, a camera like this, it's largely about enjoying the experience, the process of photography, and not solely about the results. And I feel like they fall down in the experience, in that the viewfinder is just not good to use. And of course, the rear screen is the same rear screen, like you can't see it in the sun. So you want to use the viewfinder, but then it's like all kind of pixelated and small. But overall, like it performs fantastic. It's a good, versatile camera. Video stills, 33 megapixels is going to be fine. Sony has a great series of compact lenses, as does Sigma. And Samyang has really compact lenses. So you can make a really small, lightweight, full frame kit. And I would put compact primes on it. So I thought it was really good. But like I said, with those flaws.
The customer experience to me is always very, very important. Like you know, and I do a lot of shooting outside. And no matter how bright they make that LCD, and especially with my glasses now, with my eyes the way they're going, I can't discern enough information. I have to go up to that EVF. And so having an EVF, if you're going to be traveling in bright sun a lot, I agree with you there. So what is the price of the A7C2?
Shoot, where did I write this down? I think it's $2,100.
So like $20.99?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my notes right now, and
No worries.
I thought I had written it in there, but maybe I just put it directly into the video. So now I'm not even sure. I might have to just look it up.
You cover a lot of stuff. It's people don't realize it, how trying to keep everything straight in your head sometimes it can be a little difficult. How many takes we'll do in video going, nope, that's the Sony, nope, that's the Canon. We get things all mixed up.
Oh, let me tell you, I could not get A7CR or A7RC. Chelsea and I both just consistently said it incorrect, and now I don't even remember which it is.
Oh my God, I'm doing that all the time. Sometimes it's a very simple word such as capability or video, and I will do it 10 takes, not being able to get it right, and I just completely change the word. You're lucky because you have a team, and of course you work with your wife. My wife, she supports me, but I do everything myself. So when I'm having a bad day, I really have a bad day.
Yeah, because you screw up on camera, but then you have to edit yourself too. You ever
Yep.
get mad at your previous self for being so bad on camera?
It's like, you idiot, why did you call it the Sony when it's clearly the Canon, or stuff
Yeah.
like that. Sometimes I let it go, but this is not about me or you, our mistakes we make. Let's talk about that A7R. See, I want to say A7R5, the A7CR. I think of this camera as a mini. I thought of it as a mini A7R5. What can you tell us about this camera and its price?
It's absolutely a mini A7R5. It is a little bit cheaper. I want to say $3,200 US. And of course, the images are going to be the same, but they have taken away a few things. Like I said before, the viewfinder is a little bit worse. The frames per second dropped to 8 frames per second from 10 frames per second. So it's going to be a little less capable for sports. It doesn't do 8K video, but I think this camera does a really good job of filling the niche of cameras like the Leica Q3, like a small sort of around the neck or shoulder camera. With 60 megapixels, you're going to be getting as much image quality as you possibly could based on whatever lens you happen to put on there. Like the sensor's not going to be the limiting factor. So you can always be like comfortable, I'm getting the best possible images I can in this situation. And the autofocus system, same as A7R5, which means it's pretty much seamless. Like you don't have to go through and select an autofocus point. It'll find the eye of the person or the dog or the right focal point in the scene like all the time. So it just kind of works and works easily. Let me see. I don't know what else to say about it. I think the image stabilization, it's okay. I think we found it was good for about 3 stops. So that's good, but not mind blowing.
What about oversampled video? What can you tell us there?
I thought it looked great. In our review, we did a low light test where I put the video up against the A7C2, and I found the A7CR's video was a little bit better quality, even in low light. I think there's a lot of talk about high megapixels mean high pixel density means small photo sites, which means high noise, and we just don't find that to be true, especially with a little bit of processing. Like all the images, even in low light, looked great.
Yeah, and I look at this. So we now know that the price is $29.99, which was kind of, remember what I said earlier, guys? I said I thought that it'd be conservative here, maybe $29.99. So we're $900 off the A7R5. Now, Tony, I back in the day, I used to watch you a lot, but since I have my own channel, I barely have enough time to do what I do. And I've got another video I got to shoot right after this and get it out.
Yeah, me too.
So, and I don't want to go over the time. How much time do you have with us? And I'll make sure we stick to that.
Oh, I don't know. I did 5 or 10 minutes or whatever.
right.
I'll answer questions. I'm in no hurry.
Well, guys, what I would like to do is, as Tony just inferred, I'd like to open up the floor to questions. If you have any questions to Tony or any of our other guests, Tony's only going to be here for about another 5 or 10 minutes. So go ahead and ask your questions to find out anything about the
All right,
A7CR.
Tony, just to confirm, I've been watching your channel for many years, and
Oh,
thank you for your content. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Sometimes it's good to disagree, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, now, does it have a mini HDMI and a single card slot?
It does have a single card slot. I did not test the HDMI, so I don't recall. I'm sorry.
Okay, you don't recall. Okay, those were two big ones I was interested in.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry. They make
cool.
me send the cameras back like a week ago, so I don't happen to have them on hand.
Oh, did you review it? Did they give it to you for a while or a couple of weeks
Yeah,
or anything?
we had them for a couple of weeks. Yeah. So I had lots of time with them, but I did have to send them back. In other words, I can't
Yeah,
hold
of
it up and
course.
actually check stuff for you.
Yeah. All right, that's cool. I think the price point is a little high. I think it's just go and get yourself a 4 or the 5 for almost the same price.
Yeah, they're selling the size, right? The smaller size. That's really the only reason you'd want it. Or maybe you want, I think it's a little bit more stylish. But yeah, it is. It's
Yeah,
a tough sell against the 4 or the R5, I think. I think most people will probably want the 4 or the R5.
yeah. There you go.
Well, Tony, Beach Bumbo just says, Tony, what's up? So what's up to you,
What's up, Beach Bumbo?
But Matthew has a question for you. Any indications of any overheating or overheating warnings on either camera?
I did not have any problems with it, but I also didn't test it like that because to me that wasn't the case. Like our recommendation was if you're doing like professional work, definitely go ahead and get the full 4 or 5. But I didn't do like 4K 60 long-term recording to see when it overheats. I just didn't do that test.
Okay, the next question is from Colton. As a vlogger, would either of the A7CR, either of the grammar, sometimes I read them literally as I'm doing it and I don't self-correct for the grammar, would either the A7CR actually be a good buy, or would you steer us towards something like the A7S III or the upcoming A7S4?
I think they are totally capable for vloggers, both the C2 and the CR. We did not switch. Like we're still shooting with an A7S III. We need 2 card slots. We need 4K 60. So the A7C2 does 4K 60, but like the A7 IV, it has to crop down to do 4K 60. If you're shooting 4K 30, then that's not a concern. The quality of it is great. The A7CR will do 4K 60 full width, and it looks great. But again, single card slot, and I don't know about you, I've definitely had a card fail, and I had to go back and refilm a whole segment, and I'm not doing that anymore. I'm all about workflow. I'm all about not having to do things twice. So I insist on having vlogging cameras with 2 card slots.
You know, Tony, true story. I did a review of the Angelbird. I don't know if it was the 1 terabyte CF Express Type A or another one. Got it finished, got it polished. Boom, SD failed.
Yeah.
And I just looked at the screen very angry. I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm not doing it again. Cooled down, came back a day later and reshot the thing. Yeah. It is frustrating to no end when that happens.
Yeah, and it happens a lot more to video people than it does to stills people because you're just writing more data. And the higher bit rate you're using, whatever, that just increases your odds. And one little corruption in a video file can render the entire thing unusable.
So what Tony's saying is the
infuriating.
universe hates video shooters.
Yeah, it seems to.
Well, yeah. That's but the universe tends to, but the universe still placates to us, especially with the current gen of cameras. Tony, I had a question of where do you see the A7C2 in terms of more for video shooters? Because the way I've looked at it, you know, up to this release was sort of trying to. I felt it may be something that if you're going around traveling, if you're traveling, you want to bring something light. But I also look at also the competition, and there's a lot of competition both under and around this price. So where do you
Yeah.
see it in terms of video for video shooters? And what would you say is the video feature that would be the thing that sells it for a video shooter?
Well, it's got that level of reliability that only Sony and Canon have, where you can just put a subject in front and it will lock on focus, and you just never have to worry about it. And that's not the case with most cameras. You're pretty much stuck in the Sony or Canon world if you want that level of reliability. But it's really tough as a video camera to compare it to the Canon R8, which I think if you're okay with one card slot, like the Canon R8 seems to win that segment. It's just generally more powerful and it's a little bit less expensive.
Yeah.
Specifically, what about it between the R8 and the A7C successor that you think the R8 is better, or who would you say is better for?
Well, the R8's less expensive and it does full width 4K 60, if I'm recalling right. And
Yeah, it does. It does full with 4K 60.
yeah, so
Excuse
the
me,
A7C
Simon.
doesn't.
Excuse me, guys. Um, I just got the live pictures from the Porsche car race yesterday using this new camera from Sony Ambassador.
And
Should have
So,
gotten invited to that event.
yeah, so it looks like it's pretty good. Sony's latest lightweight full frame cameras, A7CR at 61 MP. Yeah, and then here's one shot at 15th of a second. You can see the race car and blurred background. He's an AP photographer, and they use Sony products. So looks pretty good.
That's a good demonstration, but what AP sports photographer is going to go out with like a compact focus camera and a single
No,
card slot?
what?
I know they're
No.
making a
Well,
demonstration, but
I mean, he's got his I don't know, Sony whatever long lens on there, but
yeah,
he's an AP photographer, and AP switched from Canon to Sony because they wanted to amalgamate their video and still package together, so they could get one big price cut. So yeah, so he uses the A1 for work
yeah,
predominantly, and then there was a Sony event Sunday at the Sepang Raceway for the Porsche Cup. So Sony brought along, evidently they brought along this new camera for him to test it.
sorry to
yeah,
cut
that
in,
makes
John,
sense.
but
So
we've only got a few
no,
more minutes.
he wouldn't. I mean, no, he's not saying that they would use this for sports or anything, but they just Sony Malaysia brought it along.
Yeah, it is really nice because it is ready to do that stuff. Like you could take pretty much the same pictures as you could with the bigger bodies. It's not optimized
Yeah.
for that, but I will say the viewfinder off to the left, I find it a little disorienting with big telephotos. Like you can get used to it, but I definitely prefer the
Uh,
like centered viewfinder, DSLR style viewfinder for
yeah.
sports telephotos.
It
Okay, I want
looks
to
a
do a
little
bit of
thick.
rapid fire now. I'm going to keep to time, Tony, because I know you're busy. So I'm going to give you a
Okay.
bunch of questions. Let's see if we can rapid fire through these. John asks, does the A7CR shoot 6K or 6? Yeah,
No.
does it shoot 6K?
No, they took away the 8K feature of the A7R5, and I think it's just to prevent overheating. Probably just doesn't have a big enough
Oh,
body to handle all that data without getting hot.
Fair enough. This question's already been answered. Did you test HDMI?
No,
Uh,
it seems like out of scope for what the camera is, but
does it have 4K 120? Either of them?
uh, I I would have to look at the specs. I'm sorry, I don't remember. If it is, it's with a crop or with line skipping, but I don't think so.
No, and I don't see that here either when I'm looking at, well, that's the A7C2. The A7CR. Again, we can get to that later. I want to move ahead, see what else we've got here. Chris asks, are the bodies the same size as the original A7C?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's exactly the same body. But with that said, I didn't put them side by side, but I think that's the case.
All right. Beach Bumbo has another question this time instead of what's up. Which will overheat first, A7C2 or R8, or which one is better for shooting?
I don't know which would overheat first, but yeah, if I were a video shooter, I'd probably grab the R8 and save a few bucks for lights or lenses or mics or something.
Okay. This is a question that I find interesting. Will the A7C drop to 1500 or cheaper? Because when Sony gave their presentation, they showed 3 cameras side by side. So there's no plans right now to discontinue the cheaper version. Do you have any pricing information as Sony's told you?
No, they didn't tell me about a price drop for the A7 III, but that is kind of their strategy. Like the original A7 stayed around for the longest time at like $1,000 or $900 price point. So I think they just keep manufacturing these older cameras and lowering the price point. It's not a bad strategy, but it's not my favorite because these cameras have like the older user interface, and if somebody's buying an entry-level camera, it's probably because it's their first camera, and those are the people who would really benefit from the more sophisticated autofocus system and easier to use menus. So I kind of prefer Canon's strategy of just producing lower-end cameras at lower price points rather than reducing the price of old, sort of outdated cameras.
Okay, well, Tony, we've come up to that time point, so I want to ask any final words about any of these, either these 2 cameras or the lens.
I think they're great options. I really like that Sony is giving us different form factors, like the same capabilities, but you can choose different styles and different sizes. So overall, I think more options is better. So I think it's a win, but I don't think they're right for most people.
Fair enough. Well, just a thank you. You know, every now and then I reach out to people of all different backgrounds, videographers, photographers, YouTubers, up and coming, as well as established. And Tony, you've been doing this for many, many years. You've got a well-established channel with well over 1 million. And I've used you as a bit of a mentor at times, not kind of a one-way. I'd look at what you're doing and get ideas. And for you to show up on my channel, I do sincerely appreciate it. So thank you very much, Tony. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
Tony.
thanks for
Hope to
having me
see
on,
you
guys.
hope to see you on Vaughan's show. He's waiting for you.
Oh, okay.
He's a big fan of yours, Vaughan.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm sorry.
And please give my best to your wife as well. But yeah, thank you very much, Tony. I do appreciate you taking time out in your busy day.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Great
Thanks,
to hang
Tony.
out.
Take care, man. Take care,
Bye.
man.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Well, as I told you guys, I always do like to surprise with some special guests, and I can never tell you who they are until the embargo's lifted, because you never know. Well, you never know if they're able to make it up, because sometimes there was another person too. I was talking with Manny and a few others, but things can sometimes happen at the last minute and they can't make it. So I do appreciate it, because what it does is it really provides us with context. And if you're looking to pre-order either of those 2 cameras, this is the second time Sony's done this, you can go ahead and pre-order it, but if you take a look on the screen here, it's not going to be until 10 a.m. tomorrow. I don't understand that. You've got all this hype, you've got all the people reviewing it. Why wouldn't you want that pre-order available right there to take advantage of it? I've found that really strange. I do want to thank Stop the FOMO for a super chat, but please, guys, don't feel you have to super chat. I'm here to help you, to provide you with the latest information, to cover the event live, and then go through with guests who've had the cameras live in hand or testing them to provide you with their thoughts and feedbacks on these 2 cameras. I can't remember
Well, Sony, it seems like Tony wasn't too, he wasn't jumping up and down on this thing.
Well, when you look at these 2 cameras, I think, which was what I was just going to say, is we've heard this from others earlier today in the stream, is that these, Andrea said it from Sony Alpha Rumors, these cameras are aimed at people who really do want a compact camera for travel. They don't want something big and heavy. They want something that's going to work for them. And I think that makes sense. Now, at $21.99, personally myself, I go with the A7 IV. But if you're looking at compact, I'd also look at the Fuji X100V as well. I think that's very compact. But the A7CR at $29.99, it's a tough price point for those of us, John, that live outside of the United States. That $3,000 is more like $5,000 Canadian. In Australia,
Yeah, that's
it's
a
probably
lot of dough.
6,000. It is, and so if you're starting to look at that price point outside of the U.S., you're starting to think, well, if I'm going to get in that deep, I might as well just go with the A7R5.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Simon, for 5,000 Canadian dollars, what can you get out there regarding all brands?
I would get this. I would again get the.
A lot.
I would get the Canon R5 or the Nikon Z8 for $1,000.
Well, there you go. Well, there you go. So why would you want this?
Well,
Why would anybody want this?
because I'm not a travel guy. I don't want. My wife, she wants everything lightweight, compact, and point and shoot, easy to go. My wife wouldn't. She would. She held my camera once. She says, "Oh my God, this is heavy." This is one of those areas where I think weight really does matter. The weight of the camera,
well,
the
then
weight of the lenses.
And then
Yeah,
get a
but-
Ricoh
yeah.
GR3.
Yeah, but like I said, for me, anything over $2,800, you're talking about a professional. You're talking about a professional camera, but you're lacking professional features.
Yeah, well, exactly, James. You're paying pro price, and yet they're cutting down on the goodies. I don't get it.
Yeah, for me, it's like even for travel, and I was making this, even though, lightweight and travel, and I know I'm different because I actually like weight because weight helps with micro jitters. As a filmmaker, weight helps with micro jitters, and I would much rather do what I can to get a better image than worry about, necessarily something that's more convenient in terms of weight for me. But even then, there's still even options that are kind of lightweight that offer. The FX30 is relatively. All these are still relatively lightweight cameras. I mean, you got travel camera, to me, a good one. If you're not really if sensor size is not a big deal, you got the GH6. That has a whole lot of great features, and also it comes fully weather sealed. I don't even know if this is even fully weather sealed. Or you can look at something like the S5 II, or you can go with something like you mentioned Fujifilm. Fujifilm's X100 series of cameras, or the XT4, or something like the XT4 if you want something light, compact, and they're all cheaper than the cheaper options. They're not full frame, and I guess they're looking at it as like they're getting full frame. I guess is that you get compact, you get full frame premium, and then you get you're getting the autofocus premium that is Sony, and that's really what they're looking at the price. But I still look at their older ones. I'm like, well, what's wrong with their older cameras that I can get at a cheaper, that I know I can get at a cheaper price, that like an A7C. If I'm looking at an A7C, if I'm going to only have one card slot, if I'm going to have micro HDMI, I'm looking for somebody that's really worried about lightweight that much for travel. They're going to look more. They're going to look somewhere between $2,000 and under, because if I'm a professional, I need that second card slot. I can to a certain extent tolerate maybe a micro HDMI, but for travel, but even then, I'm like a full size HDMI. But I've gotten to a point where now I need two video sources out now. I need like SDI because I'm working now with a first AC. So if I'm traveling for like paid gigs, which is what a professional would do, I may have a first AC and I need him to see, or or a clientele monitor. So for video shooters, there's better options. In fact, the BS1H is like the same price as this, even though it doesn't have a monitor and you have to rig it up. I still would probably, if I was just a video shooter was traveling, will go for that, or Panasonic BS1H over this.
Yeah, and if you're with Sony glass, like I would go with the FX30. I think what Sony's trying to do is they're trying to fill every gap in the lineup, or just trying to find a gap and fill it, whereas Nikon and Canon are still trying to populate their mirrorless lineup. There's a few cameras that don't make sense to me, like the ZV-E1. It didn't appeal to me. These two don't appeal to me. For me, where I'm at, I look at the FX3, the FX30, the A7S III. as go-to cameras, but if I was going to focus on video alone, it would be the FX3 or the FX30. Their FX line is incredible for video. When it comes to stills, the A7 IV is clearly a very, very solid camera. We can just see this from the sales of it is just doing very, very well. And look, Imagination Films is saying, yeah, I'm going to go with the A7R5 instead, because when you are separated by about even $900, when you're that high in price, yeah, I would either look at the A7 IV or the A7R5. That's my thoughts. Your final thoughts, John?
Well, like I said, I just think it's overpriced for what you get.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I don't see the justification, and I totally agree with James. It's up there. It's in, it's in that pro price range, knocking on the door of the pro price range. Yet you're getting less.
Well, if you recall, the Sony A7 III was what, $1999, and when the A7 IV came out, it was $500 more. So we've got to that point where Sony is no longer offering a premium or a discount. They're now offering, hey, we're as good as Canon, we're as good as Nikon, we're going to offer the price. And those days of, wow, look what Sony's offered for this price, and those days are gone. Sony's pricing their cameras based on what they feel the market.
Well,
can bear.
here's the deal. Here's the deal with Sony over the years, and we were just discussing this today. That the Sony camera from the A7 II, which I had, to what it is now, the body has never changed, but the price has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And don't tell me that you're paying for the extra technology in those machines, because I'm not buying that. But let's be honest here. That camera design has been around way, way too long.
Yeah.
It's dated. Get rid of those dials up on top of there. The grip is just weird.
Stop the FOMO.
Can't
You came
even
in
fit my
just right at
hands in
the
it.
end.
Huh?
Stop the FOMO. He's in his studio, as you can see from the logo in the background, just behind his head. He's finally with us. And
I'm here.
yeah, so John, just give me a second. I want to talk to Stop the FOMO. You were busy driving around. Were you gathering research? Were you being an investigative journalist?
I was just dropping a son off to college, and flight came in later than I expected. I apologize to all the guests. I thought it was amazing. You had Tony Northrup on. Like, oh my God, he's just ordinary filmmaker. Simon is getting big, too big for his britches. I love it.
Yeah,
well,
that's what I said.
I talked to a lot of people, and you have no idea how many people, because to get 4 people in the room, you have to ask a lot because of, sorry, I'm at a photo shoot or I'm doing this. These people are very busy. So when Tony responded and saying, yeah, I should be there, I'm like, okay. I didn't tell anyone. I thought because, knock on wood, once you say something, it doesn't happen, right? Because look at the issues we had with James before. It took him 20, 30 minutes to solve problems to come on the stream. And I thought, I don't know, but Tony has over 1.5 million subscribers. He's been doing this a long time. And I really did appreciate him taking time out. He doesn't get anything out of this. He doesn't get anything out of this. He might get a couple of subscribers, but it was very much appreciated.
No, he seems like a nice guy. Try to get Jared Polin on there.
Oh,
I'm
telling
afraid
you,
of getting Jared on because
have you seen Vaughan? Vaughan had Jared Polin on there one time, and we could not believe it. We just looked. You got to be kidding! This guy is, huh? He definitely ain't like what he's on his episodes or on his video. Completely different.
Well, how is he? Well, how would you say his demeanor is?
I don't want to get in trouble, man, but it wasn't what we expected.
You use nice words. We can be descriptive without going down the rabbit hole. Because I see him as aggressive, but you see, sometimes what we put out on our channel is kind of an alter ego of us.
A couple of words: condescending.
Oh, really?
Big time, arrogant.
Yeah, no,
and he'll just flat out swear to you.
I'm ignorant, and I'll admit that, and that's why I do this, just to learn. I think ignorance is
No, he's is nothing like you, Simon. I mean, it's just like we were just drop jaw, me and Vaughan and Chuck are going, oh my God, this
no.
is
I
unbelievable.
I don't want clicks for that reason. That's not what I'm going for. I want to build a community. John, having you on, I've been with you on other channels. Your depth of knowledge and experience with Nikon, Canon, Leica, Pentax, OM systems, all of it. You've got a lot of experience, and it's good to have your viewpoint. James, I love it because you're a film. See, there's words I can't say. Cinematographer. You're a filmmaker, and having your experience. No. This is I do this. This is my life. I'm telling you, this is what I've noticed. My experience. Stop the FOMO, who's acted like a bit of a mentor, and he's the guy you blame if you don't like my new thumbs, because he helped me do stuff that gets them a little bit more recognized. And you've been giving me advice over the last year or two. And one of the reasons I wanted you on is because you shoot Sony, so much Sony, FX3, FX30, Alpha 1, A7 IV. And I want to give you...
FX30 is still the one to get, I have to say.
Why?
So we're talking about value, and I'm looking at the A7 Cinema, this RCR whatever, and it's trying to convince people that it's a cinema camera. The issue is, and it's very specific because obviously I shoot differently than filmmakers. I do a lot of live streaming, whether it's live streaming off an HDMI directly to my computer or whether it's live streaming off a USB. The only camera that does not overheat after long form videos is the FX30, and I assume the FX3 as well. I've tried long form videos on the A7 IV, and even on, so definitely on the SD card, it's going to overheat at 4K 60. So that didn't work for me. And then 4K 30, it's touch and go. I did not like it at all. So I went with external recording, and that did not work well either on the A7 IV. After about 45 minutes, the camera was shut down. And essentially, it's a 1080p long form, and I can't trust it on a card. So that's why I have it on the HDMI to the external recorder, because worst case, the recorder still has it, right? The card doesn't fail. And I don't want to deal with double cards like you guys are saying. It's like, you need to have it. I'm like, wait, if I have an external recorder, then I don't have to worry about that at all. And the USB, on the one hand, oh, that's great. You go direct USB recording because it's plug and play, but you're limited to 1080p, 60, which definitely overheats on the A7 IV, or 4K 15, which is not very usable, right? Because of just the motion issues. With the FX30, I have not had any issues with anything related to overheating, regardless of what my setting is, 4K 30, 4K 60, even though it's cropped. And for me, the overheating is a deal breaker because many times when I do live streams, in the middle of a live stream, one of the cameras was shut down. It's always the A7 IV. FX30 still going strong. And I was hoping that the A7C, but looking at the way they set it up, the micro or mini HDMI definitely is going to have overheating issues. Too small. The body's too small. And it's such a use case specific. So here's my disappointment. If it attempts to tell people this is entry-level video, the problem is the headroom is so low. So if you get it as an entry level, and we're talking YouTubers, video loggers, right? If it's entry level, you want a bit of life in it. But at some point, when you get into live streaming, it's like you got to replace it. And I'd rather they start with FX30, where there is never stress of overheating, ever, no matter if you ever get into live streaming or long form videos. And they have such a good collection of lenses, and the dynamic range is just good enough, right? And I've seen wedding photographers love the FX30 as long as you understand its dynamic range limitations, you work within it, and it's pretty good. I think it's amazing for the value. And this goes back to the value. For under $2,000, the body is like 1,700 now, 1,800. And the APS-C camera collection is really good. I have a bunch of primes. I'm on it right now, right? I'm going through USB direct from my FX30. I'm going to get a second one, and the minute I get it, I'm going to get rid of my A7 IV and wait for Sony's Alpha 1 Mark II update and hope that the body has something similar to A7S III to deal with the overheating. But I think the A7C R is still a photographer first camera. but to call it entry level video, it misleads those who want to take this as a video camera,
Yeah,
because the ceiling
yeah,
is so low to take it to the next
yeah,
level. And I think
yeah.
that's
Yeah, I totally agree. I like honestly, I'm with FOMO 100% with the A7C versus like the FX30. I would much rather get spend $1,800 on the FX30, get a little monitor, because I I know it's photography. It's a bit different. You like going through the viewfinder. I like going off a monitor, but it's from a video. And I'm talking because we were talking about a video, and we're talking about video content, vloggers, things that we do. It it just, to me, you're getting the exact same camera. If you think about it, they're because both of them are from the A7 IV sensor and processor. You're getting almost the exact same camera, except the higher priced camera is one card slot down, does not have a full size HDMI, doesn't have CX Express Type A. It's only SD, and because it's SD, you're limited to what you can do with resolutions and frame rates and recording options. And I know somebody asked, well, can you get better recording options if you go internally outside of a different codec with ProRes? The recording options are going to be the exact same thing. You're unless Sony comes out of nowhere and just, because I don't even think they talked about even doing external raw recording. But even then, as an entry level video, who's doing external raw recording um, as an entry level video camera? You want to be able to just go in, put cards in, and go in and shoot instead of just overcomplicating it with an external raw recording. It's like, and I know it's like the A7R, the A7CR. Jesus, naming needs to be worked on too. The A7CR, I totally agree, it is a photography camera, but at the same time, I think John would agree. If I'm a photographer, maybe I want to try to get higher resolutions. There's still a bunch of other options you can go with. Heck, the A7 IV still is a high resolution sensor camera for photography if that's what you want, and that's going to be cheaper than this one. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be interested because when I actually look at the rest of the YouTube community and seeing how, because we kind of know what we should expect in terms of you know coverage and discussions typically with a Sony release. But I'm I'm just, yeah, as a pure video shooter, as someone who does it professionally, even if I'm looking at it just from someone who wants to get in, and even someone who's like, I want to get in full frame, I would just look at them and go, there's better options. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you got the Canon R8. It's a full frame camera. It's like $1,500. You got the FX30. It's a full frame camera. It's like $1,800. There's just, in terms of full frames, even something like the S52 or the S52X, they have way better video feature options. Even though they don't have CF Express card slots, they still have better video options and even features that would be better for you if you really want to take from video from being a hobbyist to a professional. Those cameras still have better options. And if you really are just being a pure video shooter, I mean, it's not full frame, so, but like for a video, like you got Black Magic out there as well. It's just, that's why I'm just like, I don't know who this is for. It's compact, but a lot of these cameras are compact. How much compact do you want without trying? And then you're asking, well, this camera keeps overheating. Like there's this thing called physics. There's only so much you can do. I know everybody wants to get down to, everybody basically wants an iPhone, but they want it to have like professional quality, and I get it. But at some point, you got to come to the realization you can't get down to this without going into issues. And I think we went black, or did I just? Oh,
No,
no, we
you're
did.
you're doing
We,
such a rant that I have to give you your own screen.
well, the rant's over. So yeah, I'm done.
And I hate to jump in, guys, because I have to pick up my son at summer camp soon. And I have
Yeah, I
another
gotta
video to
go.
record for this afternoon. Oh, there's me. Hello. I need to change the exposure a bit. I screwed up. I re-registered C3 on my R5, and I should have re-registered C1, so I blew away my live stream settings. So yeah, it's not as good as I want it to be. Oh, well. Next
All
time.
right,
I'm
I gotta
also not
go.
broadcasting in 4K. Thank you, John. I
I gotta
appreciate you
go,
joining
Simon.
us. Very appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. When you have the next launch, like the Nikon ZF, give me a call.
Will do, buddy.
I got one on order, so hopefully I'll get it before. All right, you guys. Nice meeting you,
It was a
Thank you.
pleasure meeting you,
James.
John.
All right,
Photo, good
man.
to see you again, man.
Okay, keep the rubber side up, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Take care.
I prefer the expression stay green side up, but you know, hey. James, I'm glad we finally got you in here. Not sure what. Send me an email with the description. I'll send it off to Ecamm. I'm doing this wireless. I should have plugged in the cable. I'm not doing it in 4K. I should have done it in 4K. I know this morning I did a lot of setup. I just hadn't done it in a while, and I forgot a few things. But no, I'm happy. We didn't get the fact that we peaked at around 250 viewers tells me that there isn't a huge interest in these cameras. And I think when it comes to Sony, the A7 IV, the better camera, the A7R5, and if you're doing cinema or a lot of video, then go with an FX camera like the FX30 at 1800. There are a lot of good cameras out there. But I want to thank each of you for tuning in, joining me. A special thanks to Tony Northrup for joining me earlier. Very much appreciated. And thank you for sitting at home watching this entertainment, this live stream. I hope you enjoyed it. And this will be showing up live on the channel a little later. And right after this, I'm going to go set up and record another video for you. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye all.
See ya.